ma'am, thank you so much for getting out the time to do this. Like we discussed, the idea of doing this is to create role models for recent graduates, specifically women graduates, because this is as part of the special interest group for women. Uh, I think we have a lot of really good stories within our community, and the idea is to highlight those by speaking to people like you who've been in consulting, specifically you, for so long, and to just tell us how you got where you are, and what are all the things that you kind of learned along the way, and what helped you get where you are.
No,
So I'm
absolutely.
just
My
yeah.
pleasure, Garima. It's a complete, I would say, honor for me to be a part of this. And, IMA has a very special place in my heart always. So anything I can do to, contribute and encourage more people, more graduates, women and men from IMA to follow their own journey, I'm most glad. It's my pleasure.
That's great to know, ma'am. So, ma'am, just starting straight off the bat, you started out as an engineer, right?
Yes.
And then from there, you decided to do an MBA, and then you decided to join consulting. Uh, it sounds like a very typical journey because you hear a lot of those examples, but I'm sure there are a lot of peculiarities in the middle why you decided engineering, why you decided MBA. And then within consulting as well, you've chosen healthcare as a vertical to kind of specialize in. So, what kind of drives you to reach where you are? Like, what drove you to get where you are?
It's an interesting question, and the way you started, Garima, actually, it sounds like a very cliche journey, and in many ways, at least the choices at the time that I made it were pretty cliched, if I just, think about it. So I was always a very good student in school, and in those days, many, many, many years ago, in the 90s, if you were a very good student in school, then engineering was a default choice, either engineering or medicine. So I have to say that I didn't think much about it at that point in time when I chose engineering. I was just doing very well in school, and I had a lot of engineers in my family and no doctors. So somehow it was, I don't know even today if I'm at a heart engineer, but it was just the default choice to kind of, get into engineering. And then, again, if you were doing very well in college, which I was, IMA was a standard that everybody was looking forward to do their post graduation. And again, I don't think I knew much about management education at all. At that point in time, I didn't even know what careers it would open up. But at engineering, it again just seemed like a natural choice to say, okay, let me try to get into the best postgraduate institute I can. And it was as simple as that. So it sounds, it is actually as cliched as it sounds. Really, but I would say that IMA did open my eyes, and it was the first time I stepped out of home. So I did my engineering in Delhi, which is where I grew up, and I was still at home while I was doing my engineering education, which doesn't happen for most people. I ended up in engineering college, which was also in my home city. So IMA in many ways was my opening up to many things. I stepped out of home for the first time, stayed away from home. Um, and given the broad-based education that you get in IMA, which is across different disciplines, and for the first time in life, I got exposed to so many different disciplines, and in many ways, therefore, it was for me the first time I opened up to many other things. Otherwise, I was following a very linear approach to saying, okay, if you're doing well in school, you do engineering. If you're doing well in engineering, then you go and try to ride the cat, which most
Yeah.
people did at that point in time. So I think, first of all, I really do think that IMA was my sort of platform to a broader world from the world, I was in. I did my summer internship at the time in Accenture, which was one of the few consulting summer interns which was available at that point in time.
Right.
That brief experience, I really enjoyed. And I have to say that again at that time, McKinsey and some of the other consulting firms, BCG at the time, were one of the top sought out jobs at campus. And given that I also enjoyed consulting, it again sort of seemed
Right.
like the right thing to do to start out there. And I spent the first 10 years of my life, in McKinsey, and now I've been at BCG for the last 10 years. I didn't imagine that I would do consulting for this long. Like I said, I joined at that time only because I had had a little bit of an experience of what it was, and it just seemed interesting and diverse, and somewhere where you could, learn every day, which I do still.
Right.
And that was the choice in consulting. I think healthcare just happened to me. I have no background in healthcare. In fact, I ran away from medicine. The only thing I was clear,
That's true. You didn't want to do
yeah, the
medical.
only thing I was clear when I was in school is that I can't be a doctor because I can't just deal with blood and gore and things like that. So I had no background in healthcare. I have not many people in my family who are doctors. My dad is an engineer. All my elder cousins were engineers, and that was my choice at that point in time. But I think early on, by the way, the other thing that IMA did give me, and this is the context to this story, is that I also met Neeraj, who's now my husband, my boyfriend at the time at IMA. And while early on, while I was at McKinsey, he was actually at BCG. So we had both started out
Oh, so
different.
did you swap
Uh,
or did you end up?
well, I'll come to that story. I'll come to that story in a bit. But when we got married, which was about 1 year after, 1 year after I graduated from IMA, Neeraj was in the US. So
Okay.
I convinced McKinsey at the time to also transfer me out to the New Jersey office because my husband Neeraj was in New York at the time, and I just wanted to sort of join him there, and I ended up in the New Jersey office of McKinsey, which is New Jersey is the hub of pharmaceutical and healthcare. All the
Okay.
pharma companies are around there and so on, and pretty much the McKinsey New Jersey office at the time was a healthcare office because everybody who was there would work on all the pharma clients which are around in that region, and therefore I just happened to be in the office and happened to start doing a lot of work with pharmaceutical companies. And having spent a couple of years there, by the time I came back to India, and this is still the early days of consulting, I became a healthcare expert in no time. And and I also enjoyed it. I really did enjoy
Right.
it. And then one thing led to the other. I was enjoying the sector. I was quote unquote a semi pseudo expert. And therefore the journey just continued. Although I've dabbled in other sectors at points in time, which is, by the way, the other advantage of consulting. You have the ability to do a variety of different things, connect the dots across patterns, and connect the patterns across different sectors. But I've really
Right.
enjoyed my journey in healthcare, and I must say now, having worked in it for so long, I really feel that it marries for me, two things. A continuous learning environment, a corporate career which is rewarding, but also it has a side of me which has only come to me in the last few years as I've probably become wiser and more mature, is it allows me in some way to give back to society. I really do feel I'm making a difference really to the fundamental problems which are there for India, and which, by the way, has become so apparent for all of us in COVID times,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
unless India makes progress on its healthcare ecosystem, we will never be able to get progress. I think so many people have gone back into poverty potentially just because of this health epidemic. But so
Yeah.
I somewhere along that way, that passion also got married with what I was doing, and therefore it's a perfect spot for me to continue to and that really excites me. And I think that has been this combination of being able to contribute in a very in a way in consulting where you're really able to make a difference and multiply your force manyfold, with the passion for wanting to make a difference to healthcare in India. I think is the journey I've been on for at least the last many years. It wasn't how I started out. I think everybody starts out just trying to figure out what they're about. But
But I think it's interesting because you started out early on with healthcare, you probably seen the whole rise of these startup companies also come in, health tech becoming a major thing as well, and now this huge disruption with Corona as well. How has that kind of changed consulting in the healthcare space for you, or do you think it's just a regular disruption?
I think what I fundamentally believe that COVID will fundamentally reset healthcare in India in many different ways. From a technology perspective, which is where you were saying the startup ecosystem and digital in healthcare. I think it's too early to say how has it changed, but it's definitely definitely a realization by both private and public and government that healthcare has to be delivered in a fundamentally different way than it is getting delivered today. We saw the Prime Minister talking about the National Digital Health Mission, which is a very ambitious mission to give every citizen a health ID. I
Yeah.
think it's more a reality now than ever before. So certainly this COVID provided the much needed impetus and basically exposed all the problems which were there always, but it just exposed them in a very So I think both consulting and healthcare, but actually healthcare itself is going to underchange, is going to undergo a massive transformation, and we're in the cusp of that. Absolutely.
That's interesting. I think healthcare specifically is just now a lot more in the limelight because of this. I think in every sphere, whether it's investment, whether it's actually people who are able to get the services, consulting, I'm sure you must be looking at very different approaches as well, because either companies trying to play catch up or completely different kind of solutions that you're trying to find for these organizations.
I think, yeah, in my mind, there are two major paradigms which are going to happen. One I spoke about, which is digital. Is going to be a very fundamental way in part of how healthcare will be delivered, and both private sector companies and government are figuring out what that new model is. And I think the second, which has been a big problem in healthcare in India, is that healthcare is delivered too late. Most of us land up, at the hospital when
When there is an issue.
yeah, when there is a real issue. And for example, most cancer in India is diagnosed at stage 3, stage 4, whereas if it was diagnosed earlier, we would neither have as much morbidity nor as much cost. And so that's the other change that's going to happen, that there's going to be much more focus on primary preventive healthcare and healthcare delivered out of the hospital settings and in primary care settings. I think on those two axes, absolutely, there's going to be fundamental change, and therefore organizations will adapt their business models to that. And given being in this space in consulting, we have an ability to both see that bird's eye view and be a part of some of those journeys in making organizations in helping organizations. And we are actually, I'm doing a couple of very interesting projects right now with one with a pharma company, one on the overall ecosystem, on what this new model will be and how they can play a role, in that new model. So it's actually very exciting to be a part of a very fundamental change.
Yeah, this is absolutely like baseline. It's like a baseline industry as well, right? Because now I think everything is going to be looked at with the context of healthcare becoming a fundamental. Right now, I think we've, as a country, maybe we haven't focused as much on health. I mean, labor, of course, is our advantage, but this kind of environment where labor cannot function because of an external impediment. I think that's
Yeah,
why it's an
I
interesting
think
time.
I think the generation of people like you, like young professionals, but also I think I think of my kids. I think in their mind, there's going to be a pre-COVID and post-COVID era. It is just so fundamental in terms of how it's impacted lives. I'm sure you've been working from home. I've been working from home for the last 5 months, which is a first for me. I don't think there's been a period in my life where I haven't taken a flight for as long as I haven't.
Oh yeah. That should be another feature, I think. How do consultants' lives change when there are no like fly out and fly back?
Absolutely. So it's a blessing in many ways, because I haven't spent as much time at home ever as I have got to in the last few months. But it's also uh, I think the beyond a point, it's also you miss the energy somewhere.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, so I think there's a pre-COVID and post-COVID era in everyone's mind, in their personal lives, in their professional lives. I think I often wonder about how it's going to impact the kids who are growing up with this sudden change in their lives in a manner that and what it's going to do to their worldview, as they grow up.
And like you said, it's going to be a pre-COVID, post-COVID, and then there's going to be during COVID, which everybody will just want to forget about.
Yeah,
This entire period before we get over with this.
Yeah. It's just.
So, ma'am, going back to happier days when
Yes.
you were on campus at IMA,
Yeah.
what are your fondest memories? And you already mentioned that IMA helped open your worldview when you kind of looked at things that were vastly different from what you had experienced before. But maybe some incidents from campus life that you could tell us about that really shaped
I
that.
have absolutely the fondest memories, if I may. Like I said, it has a very, very, very special place in my heart for many different reasons. I think if I go back to my first memories, when I first stepped foot on the campus, my dad had come to drop me. It just seemed like a very intimidating place. I remember this sunset hour when I stepped foot right in front of the Harvard steps and so on. It seemed intimidating to come to this place where many legends had been before and made a mark on the world. And I have to say that I really struggled in the first term. For many different reasons. Like I said, it was my first time out of home, so first time out of a sheltered environment. Also, I was someone who had always like literally gone through school and college, topping every class and every sort of school, college, university that I'd been part of. And here I came where everybody seemed better than me somehow. So I was really trying to find my identity, saying, okay, how am I going to figure out what my model is here. So I really did find in some ways both being away from home and coming to this environment where really everybody, if you look around, an IMA, somebody is a topper from LSR, somebody is a topper from their CA batch, somebody has worked for 5 years and then come back, and you're sort of intimidated by everybody around you. So I had a very tough time finding my feet, and those are my first memories of IMA. And I think, but after the first term, I really did sort of find my feet and really started enjoying the true spirit of Ahmedabad and all the little memories. And I know this sounds from an era which most of you won't recognize, but the early morning lineup for a printout in the computer in the computer lab. I'm sure all of you now have access to printers and things like that, or the many night outs before projects and whack. I'm sure that's still
around.
That's still around, and what we used to call the famous whack run, which you would kind of run across from your dorm to the submission, and that was and all the twos would sit and watch and laugh at all the ones and get vicarious pleasure from having the same torture inflicted upon the ones that was inflicted upon them. And I've been to campus many times. I go back both for recruiting and otherwise. And of course, there are a lot of food options now on campus, but there used to be one little canteen called Night Retreat at that time, and you would get Maggie and coffee, and that's really about it. So I remember many nights when at 3 a.m. the only solace was to eat Maggie and coffee. So I have so many fond memories. I also just really, I think in terms of the campus, what I always find very enchanting is the LKP, and I have a very distinct memory of a Jagjit Singh concert, which had happened.
Wow.
In LKP, and it's just so mesmerizing every time I still think about it. We were sitting on those little balconies on the on those first floor and enjoying
the classroom.
It's just lovely, those memories.
That would have been something. Jagjit Singh on campus.
Yeah, his mesmerizing voice and LKP and the setting, and it was really quite.
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah, so I think there's in so many ways there's so many memories that it's hard to pick a few. And like I told you, I also other than the fact that of course IMA was my sort of diving board to the world of professional career, but I also found my soulmate and love at IMA. So I have a lot of beautiful memories from that as well.
Was it like 2 States? Please dispel the myth.
No, I really didn't like 2 States at all. It's that's why I did watch 2 States, and I said, okay, this is such a wrong representation that it should not even be put out.
Let me give you a little bit of a update. So since that movie has released, so I joined just I think a year after it released, and every day there are tourists or people from the city who come in and ask where was this scene shot, and then they go and take pictures in the same spots.
For me, I couldn't relate to 2 States at all. Somehow it just didn't feel like it reflected any of what at least my experience was. But yes, I mean, well, Neeraj was a batch ahead, so whatever, he was a 2 and so on. But I have, like I said, I have very fond memories because our bond got established then. And I remember we used to always meet at this lunch, and then we would buy some fruit and sit at LKP and eat it. So yeah, many fond memories. Like for me, IMA is like I said, is a very special place personally, because of course I found my life partner there, and a very special place professionally, because it opened my mind up to a range of possibilities. Coming from a very sheltered environment, always staying in Delhi, always being at home, always being in control of everything to not being in control of anything. So, so it was a very, very shaping experience for me.
Ma'am, I also noticed that you are lead at Women at BCG, which I'm guessing is the women's network, or what do you kind of,
Yes,
how do
yes.
you
So
describe that?
so I've been somehow in this, early on in life, I never thought about being much about, I was in DPS, which is the quintessential competitive school in Delhi, where as well I was in the quote unquote computer ability section, which meant there were very few girls in that section. Then I was at Delhi College of Engineering, where I was one amongst two women who were doing electronics engineering at the time. And then I was at IMA, by the way, and things have changed a lot. But at that time, we were 18 girls in a batch of 180. So somehow I was always in this quote unquote,
Yeah.
minority. But I never thought much about it at that point, I should say, because I was just putting my head down and doing what needed to be done. But as I entered corporate life, I did realize that while there may not be explicit discrimination, there is a lot of underrepresentation of women at all levels. There are fewer women who join, point number one, for various reasons. Either they decide in their head that this is something not for them, or there's also a lot of social conditioning to say that, should you be doing such an aggressive career and what will it do to your personal life and things like that. And then it's a leaky funnel all the way, right? So we lose women at the level when they start becoming managers. We further lose them when they start becoming senior managers, and we certainly lose a lot, before they actually make it to the leadership level, which is, partners in consulting firms. So somehow, having had the benefit of a wonderful journey myself, I just really also became passionate to say, how can we make this a more sustainable career for more and more and more women? Ultimately, in consulting, there is no other no other asset but talent. And if you can't make it a sustainable place for half the talent in the world, then you're really not, being able to do justice, to even the objective of the firm. So I was always somehow, and somehow because I joined consulting at a time when there were not very many women in consulting, I ended up, shaping my own path, and then I wanted to, see if more women could make it. So I was perhaps one of the only women who was, on a part-time career for many years, actually 3-4 years. Actually, I was at 60%, 80%. I tried everything that had been tried by anybody
Oh, wow.
at that time. And because I had my daughter in 2006, I had my son in 2009, and I was still trying to, make sure that I was a good mom, but also a good professional and do everything. So I literally tried every model that hadn't been tried by any or very few women by that point in time. And given that I could make it work for myself, I just wanted to make sure that, could I also encourage many other women to try different paths, but stay. Um, and it
So
started.
that's very interesting. I think it also, I mean, speaks to the fact that the organizations that you were working for were equally committed to making that happen.
Actually, I
Because
have to say that both the organizations I've been part of, McKinsey and BCG, have been extremely supportive, and very, very driven to make sure that we can retain the best talent, which is why I was, able to experiment with all these different things, saying, I don't want to get to a point in my professional life where I feel like I'm giving up so much personally that I quit. And at the same time, I'm not going to miss out on important things that are, important in my kids' life and important to me. And therefore, I was willing to try, and my organizations were always willing to support. And having had that experience, I just wanted to see if we could, I could be a part of making, consulting workplace a more desirable and a more attractive workplace for more women. So I started first leading women at BCG in India.
you
And
started it in India. Oh, wow.
no, it always was there. But when I
That's
joined,
okay.
I took up the responsibility of leading it, and then I also, over the last 2 years, have been leading women at BCG across Asia Pacific, where as well, even if you look across Asia Pacific, actually, there are many countries, where, you still, one feels that, India is a little bit more culturally where, women still don't have their rightful place in society, but it's also true across many other countries.
Yeah.
That I've now realized. So I think it's really been a passion, and it's been a great journey. I think we've made a lot of difference within BCG, where we now have close to 20% women in the leadership level. We have close to 40% women who join us at the entry level, which is such a far cry from the days when I joined, and I was perhaps one of the 2 women who joined in the batch or something. Having 40% incoming women is a wonderful thing. We made a lot of progress internally, but there's still so much to be done, and even more so outside. So I also tried to act as a catalyst for change in the broader corporate world, where we do a lot of interventions, reports, discussions with other corporate leaders to see how we can also be a voice of reason in the broader corporate world, and disseminate some of the best practices that we have found work for us to the broader corporate India. It's an ongoing journey. I think there's a lot of still social context, which both India and other countries, you can't change overnight. However much we fight it, childcare is still primarily a women responsibility in many parts of the world. And there is a lot of social conditioning as well, where women themselves, I think, step back sometimes even before there is a real challenge or bottleneck. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I feel very, very proud and satisfying to at least make it work for a few more in the microcosm that I can influence. And hopefully, through stories and through, like you're saying, this session, role modeling, be able to inspire a few more. And hopefully that change keeps percolating both inside BCG and outside. It's the other thing that I really feel passionate about beyond the work that I do in healthcare.
No, and I think it's I feel like, I don't know if it becomes like that for you where you are, where it kind of feels like it is part of your responsibility or duty to kind of also help women along the way, or do you look at it differently?
I really do feel that I was supported by many mentors, men and women, in my journey. And that's the reason I am where I am, because, I think it is a fact which I embrace the fact, and I love the fact that I'm able to, do so much, at home and with my kids, and that I'm still able to. So, but it is a fact of life that there are years in a woman's career when there are just a multitude of responsibilities that you have. So if I think of the phase of my career from 2006 to 2011-12, I really had more on my plate than I could manage. I had 2 young kids at home. I was still trying to progress through the, what is perhaps very, very fundamental years in consulting, where you're progressing from, a manager to a senior manager to a partner, and therefore there's a lot of expectation of what you're contributing. But I was able to, do that journey in a very fulfilling way because I had a lot of support from many around me, not necessarily women and men who were ready to, who had faith, who had trust, and who were willing to give me a chance to do things differently. And I want to, do the same for others around me, right? In their journey. So there's a bit of emotion of, I really benefited from this, and can I do it for others? And also just feel passionately that, part of it is, the organization can support, and we have a lot of policies in place, but beyond the policies in place, people do need these stories. They do need this inspiration. And they know, one of the reasons when, I joined consulting, there were very few women leaders. Actually, there were none, perhaps one woman partner at that point, and that sort of, you need the belief that others before me have done it. And why is it therefore, so difficult? And can I reach out and help at a point where I probably feel that something is not exactly working for me and I need to do something a little bit differently? So women are just as talented for sure, but there are, life stages where, things, can't work the same way. For example, I couldn't travel the same way. For the first 6 years of my consulting life was, absolutely footloose, fancy free, where I was pretty much a weekend wife, and that was fine. And my husband was the same. He's a consultant as well, but it was no different. It felt like an extension of the college, by the way. We were all just, but then it was just not an option for me to take a flight every Monday morning. I had a little baby at home, and then 2 little babies at home. So that is just the life stage that you somehow, have. And, having those role models around you, and being able to share the journey, saying you might want to do this stage of life a bit differently. You don't have to follow the same model that men have followed. And what is that journey? And once you develop that little conviction that people can make their own journeys, and it doesn't have to be a template that they follow.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's exactly why I think I started with that idea of it sounds like a typical journey. But I think these nuances, when they come out, like the fact that because you're a woman, that same journey actually has a lot of different layers as well, right? And how it's led to this outcome where, yes, you're a partner, but you're also doing a lot of these other things to help more women along the funnel to reach where you are. So I think that's something that's definitely inspiring, and I think uh, I mean, I can speak for myself personally, but I'm sure that a lot of women from my batch and the batches after would also agree that we do have, I think, a lack of role models in terms of regular people that we see and we speak to, who we bump into in office always, where you can really see that okay, they've had a similar journey, and this is what I need to do. Or if you feel that you want to ask them, you can actually just go up to them and ask. I feel like there are role models, but either they're so big that they're not accessible to everyday people. But I think that's why this journey, especially what you said about storytelling and creating those role models, is definitely important for people to see that this is possible.
No, absolutely. So I think what we do within Women at BCG, and is one, just put in place some of these structural interventions where we have, a policy around flex time working, a policy around, how do we look at women advancing and so on. But then we have a lot of this inspiration, affiliation, storytelling, joining the dots,
Right.
sometimes more careful apprenticeship. You do realize that women and men bring different assets to the workplace, but how can you make sure that you nurture and blossom them both? So it's really just an objective and a mission to say that, ultimately will we reach a workplace which is 50-50 women and men, but how can we continue on that journey across the different funnel of recruiting, retention, advancement?
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed playing this role as well. I almost equally enjoy it as my client service role. um, and you're right. I think the journey of women is certainly different. I think there is no point shying away from that. Certainly, as a mother and a professional, the journey does become different. Um, and the question is, how can the workplace adapt to that? And if you think about COVID and what everybody is thinking about, we are now imagining what would be a future of work, which would be very different from everybody has to be that 9 to 7 workplace, and that's the only model we know. I
Yeah.
think the workplace of the different of the future would be so different. And a little bit of that, within Women at BCG, we've already been doing for a long time, where we've been saying there is no one model, right? Everybody can succeed. And people have done part-time models. People have followed different paths at different points in time, to make sure that it is a fulfilling journey for them. And it's a little bit of rethinking what is the work model of the future, and does everybody have to follow that same path which has been set by the men,
Yeah.
or can people create different paths and still be able to contribute their talent, while making it a fulfilling journey? I think so. The paradigm will change, where this whole concept of there is one template of corporate success. There are going to be many templates. Uh,
Got my fingers crossed under the table. But yeah, sounds like a hopeful future, at least to look forward to. I think it's something that that's good and bad with the fact that Corona's come in. But I think people are now realizing that work at home is also work at home. And
yes.
there's a lot of this talk around mental health while you're working from home, being able to switch off boundaries, all of that. And I think it's all part of this larger change that I think it's high time should maybe come about in the workplace as well. And it's good to see that we've got people who've already done it and proved that it is possible to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you, ma'am, so much. This was a great conversation, and I'm definitely going to pick up maybe some of the learnings you've had at Lead at PCG for the SIG that we're trying to create as well for the IMA
I
community.
would be happy anytime to share some of the learnings, some of the models that we have developed. Like I said, um, probably just feel really very deeply to make a difference to the IMA community. It made a big difference to my life. I am where I am, because I got the platform, and because I was fortunate to have my world open up with IMA. And if I can make a difference to others, I would be most happy to. It's really, always a very special place in my heart.
Thank you so much, ma'am.